The rain hammered against the tall windows of the Sterling mansion, creating rivers of water that distorted the manicured gardens beyond. Inside the grand foyer, Maya Johnson clutched her cleaning supplies tighter, her knuckles turning white against the handle of her mop bucket. She had been working at the Sterling estate for exactly 3 months, and every single day felt like walking through a minefield blindfolded. The mansion sprawled across 15,000 square feet of prime real estate in the wealthiest neighborhood of the city. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, marble floors stretched endlessly in every direction, and priceless artwork adorned walls that seemed to touch the sky. Maya had grown up in a 2-bedroom apartment with her mother and 3 siblings, sharing one bathroom, and eating dinner on a card table in the living room. This world of excessive wealth still made her head spin. She moved quietly through the West Wing, her worn sneakers making barely a whisper against the polished floors. The Sterling family valued silence from their staff. They wanted the house to run like a well-oiled machine, with servants who appeared when needed and vanished like ghosts when their tasks were complete. Maya had learned this lesson quickly during her first week when Mrs. Victoria Sterling, the matriarch of the family, had coldly informed her that help should be invisible. Victoria Sterling was a woman who commanded attention simply by entering a room. At 62 years old, she maintained the rigid posture of someone who had attended finishing school and never forgotten a single lesson. Her silver hair was always styled in an elaborate updo, not a strand out of place. She wore designer suits in neutral colors, pearls around her neck, and an expression of perpetual disapproval on her face. Her pale blue eyes could freeze water, and Maya had felt their icy judgment more times than she could count. The Sterling fortune came from real estate development and technology investments that had multiplied exponentially over 3 generations. Victoria had married into the family 40 years ago, bringing her own considerable wealth from old money and adding another layer of prestige to the Sterling name. She sat on the boards of 5 charities, hosted fundraising galas that raised millions, and was photographed regularly for society magazines. To the outside world, she was the picture of grace and philanthropy. Behind closed doors, she was something else entirely. Maya finished mopping the hallway and moved toward the library, a room that smelled of leather and old books. She loved this space with its floor-to-ceiling shelves and rolling ladders. It reminded her of the public library where she had spent countless hours as a child, escaping into stories of adventure and possibility. She had dreamed of becoming a teacher once, had even completed 2 years of community college before her mother got sick, and the medical bills started piling up. The library door stood slightly ajar, and Maya could hear voices inside. She froze, recognizing Victoria's clipped tones immediately. The other voice was male, younger, with a warmth that seemed out of place in this cold house. Alexander Sterling, Victoria's only son, had returned from a business trip to Singapore the night before. Maya had only seen him twice since starting her job, both times from a distance. He traveled constantly, managing the international branches of Sterling Enterprises. Maya knew she should walk away, continue her work in another part of the house, but something in the tension of their conversation made her pause. She told herself she was simply waiting for them to leave so she could clean the library, but, truthfully, curiosity held her in place. "Mother, I've told you before that I won't be attending another one of your matchmaking dinners." Alexander's voice carried a note of exhaustion, like this was an argument they had rehearsed 100 times. "I'm perfectly capable of finding my own relationships." Relationships? Victoria's laugh was sharp and humorless. "You're 35 years old, Alexander. It's time to think about marriage, about producing an heir, about your responsibilities to this family." The Carrington girl comes from excellent stock. Her father owns half the commercial properties downtown, and her mother was a Vanderbilt. Maya rolled her eyes. She had heard Victoria talk about people like they were racehorses being evaluated for breeding. The casual cruelty of it never stopped shocking her. "I don't care about her pedigree, Mother. I'm not interested." Alexander's voice grew firmer. "And I'm especially not interested in having my personal life managed like another business acquisition." "You don't seem to understand what's at stake here," Victoria said, her voice dropping to that dangerous quiet tone that made the staff scatter. "This family has a reputation to maintain, a legacy to protect. I will not stand by and watch you throw it all away on some inappropriate dalliance. Maya decided this was definitely her cue to leave. She turned to head back down the hallway, but her elbow caught the edge of a decorative vase on a side table. Time seemed to slow as she watched the porcelain piece wobble, teeter, and then tumble to the floor. The crash echoed through the quiet house like a gunshot. The library door flew open immediately. Victoria stood in the doorway, her face contorted with rage. Behind her, Maya caught a glimpse of Alexander, a tall man with dark hair and surprisingly kind eyes that widened with concern rather than anger. What have you done? Victoria's voice could have cut glass. She swept forward, staring down at the broken pieces scattered across the marble floor. Do you have any idea what that vase was worth? It was Ming Dynasty, you clumsy fool. Maya's heart hammered in her chest. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Sterling. I didn't mean to, sorry. Victoria's laugh was cruel. Sorry doesn't restore a priceless antique, does it? This is exactly what I warned Mrs. Henderson about when she hired you. People from your background simply don't have the refinement necessary to work in a home like this. You don't understand the value of beautiful things because you've never been surrounded by anything but poverty and mediocrity. The words hit Maya like physical blows. Her face burned with humiliation, but she forced herself to stand straight, to meet Victoria's contemptuous gaze without flinching. She had worked too hard, survived too much, to let this woman's cruelty break her down. Mother, it was an accident, Alexander said, stepping forward. His voice was gentle but firm. These things happen. Stay out of this, Alexander. Victoria snapped without taking her eyes off Maya. This is a matter of household management. Alexander ignored her, moving to crouch near the broken pieces. This vase was a reproduction, he said quietly, picking up a shard and examining it. I remember Father having it made after the original was damaged in the earthquake of 2008. It's worthless, Mother. You're creating drama out of nothing. Victoria's face flushed red, caught in her lie. For a moment, Maya thought the older woman might actually explode from sheer fury. But Victoria was too controlled for such displays. Instead, she turned her rage on Maya with renewed vigor. Whether it's an original or a reproduction is irrelevant, Victoria said coldly. The issue is carelessness, incompetence, and a fundamental lack of respect for this household. You're fired, effective immediately. Mrs. Henderson will have your final paycheck ready within the hour. I want you out of my house. The world tilted beneath Maya's feet. She needed this job desperately. Her mother's treatment for stage 3 cancer cost thousands of dollars every month, even with insurance. Her younger sister was in her senior year of high school and dreaming of college. Her two brothers were still finding their footing, one struggling with addiction recovery and the other working 2 minimum wage jobs to help with family expenses. Maya's paycheck from the Sterling estate was the steadiest, most reliable income they had. Mrs. Sterling, please, Maya heard herself say, hating the desperation in her voice. I'll pay for the vase. I'll work extra hours. I'll do whatever it takes. I really need this job. My family. Your family is not my concern. Victoria interrupted, her voice like ice. You should have thought about them before being so careless. Now leave before I call security to escort you out. Mother, this is ridiculous, Alexander said, standing up. You can't fire someone over an accident with a reproduction vase. I can do whatever I want in my own home, Victoria shot back. And I'll thank you not to undermine my authority, especially in front of the help. The way she said the help made Maya's skin crawl, like they were objects rather than people, tools to be used and discarded at will. She had encountered plenty of prejudice in her 28 years, but Victoria Sterling's particular brand of casual cruelty was something special. Maya bent down and began gathering the broken pieces, her hands shaking. She wouldn't give Victoria the satisfaction of seeing her cry, even though tears burned behind her eyes. She had survived her father walking out when she was 12. She had survived holding her mother's hand through chemotherapy sessions. She had survived her own dreams dying one by one as life demanded sacrifices. She would survive this too. Leave it, Victoria commanded. The cleaning staff will handle it. Just get your things and go. Alexander opened his mouth to protest again, but Victoria silenced him with a look. Maya could see the conflict playing across his face, the war between wanting to help and not wanting to create more problems for her by defying his mother. She appreciated the impulse, but knew that Victoria Sterling was immovable once she made a decision. Maya straightened up, meeting Victoria's gaze one last time. "Thank you for the opportunity to work here, Mrs. Sterling," she said, her voice surprisingly steady. "I'm sorry I didn't meet your expectations." She walked past them both, down the hallway she had just finished mopping, through the grand foyer with its ridiculous chandelier, and into the servants' area where she kept her personal belongings in a small locker. Her hands fumbled with the combination lock as she tried 3 times before getting it right. Inside the locker was her purse, a cardigan she kept for when the air conditioning got too cold, and a framed photo of her family taken at her brother Marcus's high school graduation 3 years ago. They all looked so happy in that picture, so full of hope. Her mother's hair had still been thick and dark then, before the chemo. Her brother James had still been clean, before the relapse that sent him back to rehab. Everything had seemed possible back then. Maya shoved her belongings into her bag, blinking rapidly to keep the tears at bay. She could cry later, in private, where no one would see. Right now she needed to hold herself together, to walk out of this house with her dignity intact. Mrs. Henderson, the head housekeeper, appeared in the doorway. She was a sturdy woman in her 50s with kind eyes that had seen too much. "I heard," she said simply, holding out an envelope. "Your paycheck, including this week. I added a little extra. Consider it severance." "Thank you," Maya whispered, taking the envelope with trembling hands. "For what it's worth, I think this is grossly unfair," Mrs. Henderson said quietly, glancing over her shoulder to make sure no one was listening. "You're a good worker, Maya. Reliable, thorough, respectful. I've worked for the Sterlings for 23 years, and I've never seen Mrs. Victoria take such an instant dislike to someone." Maya managed a weak smile. "I remind her of something she doesn't want to see." Mrs. Henderson nodded slowly. "Maybe so, but that's her problem, not yours. You hold your head high, you hear me? You're worth 10 of her, for all her money and fancy airs." The kindness nearly broke Maya's composure. She hugged the older woman quickly, then grabbed her bag and headed for the service entrance at the back of the house. As she pushed through the door, the rain hit her face like tiny needles. She had taken the bus to work that morning, and the nearest stop was a half-mile walk down the private drive. She was halfway to the gate when she heard footsteps running behind her. She turned to find Alexander Sterling jogging through the rain, his expensive suit getting soaked. "Wait," he called out, slightly breathless. "Please wait." Maya stopped, water streaming down her face, mixing with the tears she could no longer hold back. "Mr. Sterling, if you're here to apologize for your mother, don't bother. I understand how things work in your world." He flinched at that, but didn't contradict her. Up close, she could see he was younger than she had thought, probably only a few years older than her. His dark eyes held genuine distress, and there was something in his expression that looked almost like shame. "What my mother did was wrong," he said firmly. "I want to fix this. Come back to the house. I'll talk to her, make her understand." "Make her understand what?" Maya interrupted, surprised by the bitterness in her own voice. "That I'm human? That I deserve basic dignity and respect? If she doesn't already know those things, you can't teach them to her. And, honestly, I don't want to work for someone who treats people the way she does." Alexander ran a hand through his wet hair, looking lost. "Then, let me help another way. I have connections all over the city. I could make some calls, find you another position, something better. I don't need your charity," Maya said, even though they both knew she absolutely needed help. Pride was a luxury she couldn't afford, but, in that moment, it was all she had left. "I'll find something on my own." "It's not charity, it's basic human decency," Alexander argued. "You lost your job because of my family, because of my mother's prejudice. Let me make it right." Maya studied him for a long moment. This wealthy man standing in the pouring rain, apparently sincere in his desire to help. She had learned to be suspicious of kindness from rich people. It usually came with strings attached, with expectations and obligations that ended up costing more than the help was worth. But, looking at Alexander Sterling, she saw something different. He seemed genuinely troubled by what had happened, genuinely angry at the injustice of it. Maybe he was one of those rare wealthy people who actually remembered that the rest of humanity existed. Why? She asked simply. Why do you care? You don't know me. For all you know, I deserve to be fired. No one deserves to be humiliated like that, Alexander said quietly. And I do know something about you. Mrs. Henderson's reports cross my desk. I know you've never been late, never taken a sick day even when you probably should have, and have received nothing but praise for your work. I also know you're supporting your family through serious hardships. That takes strength and dedication. Maya felt her defenses cracking. I need to go. She sa 3 weeks had passed since Maya lost her job at the Sterling Mansion, and those weeks had been the hardest of her life. She had applied to 47 different positions, from restaurant work to retail to cleaning jobs at office buildings. Most applications disappeared into a void with no response. The few interviews she managed to secure ended the same way, with polite rejections or the dreaded phrase, "We'll let you know," that really meant never. Maya sat at her mother's bedside in their small apartment, holding Eleanor Johnson's thin hand while the older woman dozed fitfully. The cancer had spread despite the treatments, moving into her bones now, making even the smallest movements painful. The medication that helped manage the pain cost $800 a month, and their insurance only covered half. Maya had been stretching the doses, giving her mother slightly less than prescribed to make the pills last longer, and the guilt of it ate at her every single day. Maya, her mother's voice was barely a whisper, her eyes fluttering open. You're here. I'm always here, Mama, Maya said softly, squeezing her hand gently. How are you feeling? Like I've been hit by a truck. Eleanor tried to smile, but it came out as more of a grimace. But I'm still kicking, so that's something. Eleanor Johnson had worked 2 jobs for most of Maya's childhood, cleaning houses during the day and working as a cashier at a convenience store at night. She had sacrificed everything to keep her 4 children fed, clothed, and educated. She had gone without so they could have more. And now, when she needed help the most, Maya was failing her. I brought you some soup, Maya said, reaching for the thermos on the nightstand. The kind you like, with the egg noodles. You're a good girl, Eleanor said, her eyes shining with tears. Too good. You shouldn't be spending your days taking care of an old woman. You should be out there living your life, finding someone to love, maybe having babies of your own. Mama, you're not old, and you're not a burden, Maya said firmly, helping her mother sit up slightly. You took care of us all those years. Now it's my turn to take care of you. As she fed her mother small spoonfuls of soup, Maya heard the apartment door open. Her sister Jasmine came in, dropping her backpack on the floor with a heavy thud. At 17, Jasmine was bright and ambitious, maintaining a straight A average while working part-time at a coffee shop. She had been accepted to 3 state universities, but had to defer enrollment because they couldn't afford it, not even with financial aid and loans. Hey, Mom. Hey, Maya, Jasmine said, coming over to kiss their mother's forehead. How's she doing today? Hanging in there, Maya said with forced cheerfulness. How was school? Jasmine shrugged, but Maya could see the tension around her sister's eyes. Mr. Patterson asked me again about my college plans. I told him I'm taking a gap year to work and save money. He didn't look convinced. You're so smart, baby, Eleanor said weakly. You could be anything you want to be. I know, Mama, Jasmine said, but there was defeat in her voice that made Maya's heart ache. Later that evening, after their mother had fallen asleep and Jasmine was doing homework at the kitchen table, Maya sat on the small balcony of their 3rd-floor apartment and stared at the city lights. Her phone sat heavy in her pocket, containing a number she had saved but never called. Alexander Sterling's personal number, which she had looked up through the mansion's main directory before leaving that day. She had been so determined not to accept his help, so certain that she could handle everything on her own. But pride didn't pay for cancer medication. Pride didn't put food on the table or keep the lights on. Pride didn't send brilliant 17-year-olds to college. Maya pulled out her phone and stared at the number for a long time. What would she even say? That she had been wrong, that she was desperate, that she would take whatever scraps of help he was willing to offer? The humiliation of it burned, but not as much as the thought of her mother's suffering or her sister's dreams dying. Before she could talk herself out of it, she pressed the call button. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Maya was about to hang up, relief and disappointment mixing together, when the line clicked. Hello. Alexander Sterling's voice sounded tired but alert. "Mr. Sterling, this is Maya Johnson," she said, forcing the words out quickly before she lost her nerve. "I worked at your family's estate. I don't know if you remember." "Of course I remember," he interrupted, and she could hear genuine warmth in his voice. "I've been hoping you'd call. How are you?" The simple question, asked with such apparent sincerity, nearly undid her. "I've been better," she admitted. "I'm calling about your offer to help me find work. If that's still available." "Absolutely," he said immediately. "In fact, I have something in mind. Can you meet me tomorrow morning? There's a cafe called the Garden Room on Maple Street. Do you know it?" Maya did know it. It was in a part of town she rarely visited, where a cup of coffee cost more than her usual lunch budget. "I can be there." "What time?" 8 o'clock, he suggested. "And Maya, thank you for calling. I mean that." After hanging up, Maya sat on the balcony for a long time, wondering if she had just made the right decision or a terrible mistake. She had learned the hard way that accepting help from wealthy people often came with invisible price tags that didn't reveal themselves until you were already in debt. The next morning, Maya dressed carefully in her best outfit, a simple navy blue dress she had bought at a thrift store, and altered herself to fit properly. She took 2 buses to reach the Garden Room, arriving 10 minutes early. The cafe was elegant, but not ostentatious, with large windows overlooking a small courtyard garden. Through the glass, she could see Alexander already seated at a corner table, typing on his laptop. He looked different than he had at the mansion. Less formal, more approachable. He wore jeans and a simple gray sweater, his dark hair slightly mussed like he had been running his hands through it while he worked. When he looked up and saw her approaching, his face broke into a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "Maya, thank you for coming," he said, standing up and pulling out a chair for her. "What would you like? Coffee? Tea? They have excellent pastries here." "Just coffee is fine, thank you," Maya said, settling into her seat. A server appeared almost immediately, and Alexander ordered them both coffee along with a plate of pastries that Maya didn't want but suspected he would order anyway. "So," Alexander said once the server had left, leaning forward with his elbows on the table, "I want to start by apologizing again for what happened at the house. My mother was completely out of line, and you deserved better treatment." "Mr. Sterling." "Alexander, please," he interrupted gently. "Mr. Sterling is my father, and he's been dead for 3 years." "Alexander." Maya corrected herself, feeling strange using his first name. "I appreciate that, but I didn't come here for apologies. You mentioned help finding work." He nodded, his expression becoming more serious. "I run the international division of Sterling Enterprises, which means I'm rarely at the family house. I have my own office, my own staff, my own projects. I'm looking for an executive assistant, someone organized and reliable who can help manage my schedule, coordinate with international offices, and handle various administrative tasks." Maya felt her heart sink. "I appreciate you thinking of me, but I'm not qualified for that kind of position. I have some college but no degree, and my work experience is mostly cleaning and basic retail." "Tell me about your college experience," Alexander said, sipping his coffee. Maya shrugged. "I did 2 years at community college, majoring in education. I wanted to be a teacher, but my mother got sick, and I had to drop out to work full-time. I always meant to go back, but life kept getting in the way." "What courses did you take?" "The general requirements plus some education courses. English, math, psychology, sociology, history, Spanish," Maya listed off. "I did well. Maintained a 3.8 GPA. Alexander's eyebrows rose. "That's impressive, especially while working. What about computer skills?" "I know the basic programs. Word, Excel, email, internet research. I taught myself PowerPoint when I had to do a presentation for class. Nothing fancy, but I can usually figure things out if I have time to learn." "That's more than some people with fancy degrees can say," Alexander said, smiling slightly. "Maya, I'm not looking for someone with a prestigious MBA or 10 years of corporate experience. I need someone smart, reliable, and genuine. Someone who isn't afraid of hard work and won't fall apart when things get complicated. From what I saw of you and what Mrs. Henderson reported, you fit that description perfectly." "But your mother," Maya began. "My mother doesn't work in my office, and has no say in who I hire, Alexander said firmly. This would be my decision, and mine alone. Yes, there might be occasional family events where you'd have to interact with her, but your primary workplace would be my office downtown, completely separate from the family estate. The server returned with their coffee and an impressive array of pastries. Maya took her cup gratefully, using the moment to gather her thoughts. This seemed too good to be true, which in her experience usually meant it was. What's the catch? She asked bluntly. Because in my world, when wealthy people offer jobs to people like me out of nowhere, there's usually a catch. Alexander didn't look offended by her directness. If anything, he seemed to respect it. The catch is that I travel constantly. Beijing 1 week, London the next, then Dubai or Sao Paulo or wherever our projects take us. I need an assistant who can adapt quickly, handle time zone differences, and occasionally travel with me. The hours can be unpredictable. Sometimes you'll have a normal 9 to 5 day, and sometimes you'll be fielding calls at midnight because something urgent happened in Tokyo. And the salary? Maya asked, trying not to sound too desperate. He named a figure that made her coffee cup freeze halfway to her lips. It was more than triple what she had been making at the mansion, with benefits including full health insurance and a generous vacation package. Maya struggled to find words. That's extremely generous. It's fair compensation for the role, Alexander corrected. Maya, I'm not doing this as charity. I genuinely need help, and I think you could be good at this job. But I also won't pretend I'm not aware of your family situation or that I don't feel some responsibility for what happened. If that makes you uncomfortable, I understand. Maya thought about her mother lying in that bed, rationing her pain medication. She thought about Jasmine's college acceptance letters collecting dust in a drawer. She thought about her brother Marcus working himself to exhaustion at 2 dead-end jobs, and James struggling to stay clean while living in a halfway house that barely provided basic necessities. I can start whenever you need me, she said quietly. But I need to be upfront about something. My mother is very sick. Stage 4 cancer. There will be times I need to leave for medical appointments or emergencies. If that's a problem, it's not a problem, Alexander said immediately. Family comes first, always. We'll work around whatever you need. In fact, the health insurance plan includes dependent coverage. If you want to add your mother, that would take care of her medical expenses. Maya felt tears threatening and blinked them back hard. Why are you being so kind? Alexander was quiet for a moment, looking down at his coffee cup. When he spoke, his voice was soft but carried the weight of real emotion. My father died of a heart attack 3 years ago. He was only 62. He spent his whole life building the company, making money, accumulating more wealth than we could spend in 10 lifetimes. But, in the end, when he was lying in that hospital bed, all he wanted was more time with the people he loved. Not more money, not more success, just time. He looked up at Maya, his dark eyes filled with old grief. My mother didn't understand that. She still doesn't. She thinks money and status and the right family name are all that matter. But my father taught me something different in those last few hours. He said the only things worth anything are the things money can't buy. Kindness, integrity, love, compassion. He told me to remember that the people who work for you aren't employees. They're human beings with their own dreams and struggles. He made me promise I'd always treat people with dignity and respect, regardless of their position or background. He sounds like he was a good man, Maya said softly. He was, Alexander agreed. He wasn't perfect. He made mistakes, got caught up in the business sometimes, and missed important family moments. But he tried to be good, tried to remember what mattered. I'm trying to honor that, to be the kind of person he hoped I'd become. They sat in companionable silence for a moment, both lost in their own thoughts. Maya felt something shifting inside her, a tiny seed of hope taking root. Maybe this wasn't too good to be true. Maybe, just maybe, there were still good people in the world who did kind things without expecting anything corrupt in return. When can I start? She asked. Alexander's face lit up with a smile that transformed his entire appearance. How about Monday? That gives you the weekend to sort out anything you need to. I'll have HR prepare all the paperwork, and we can spend the first week getting you oriented to how everything works. Monday is perfect, Maya said, allowing herself to smile back. They spent the next hour discussing the practical details of the job. Alexander explained the structure of the company, his current projects, and the general flow of his typical work week. He was patient and thorough, answering all her questions without making her feel stupid for asking. By the time they finished, Maya felt both excited and terrified about this new chapter. As they stood to leave, Alexander pulled out his wallet to pay the check, but Maya stopped him. "Please, let me buy my own coffee at least. I need to feel like this is starting on equal footing." He looked like he might argue, but then nodded, understanding the importance of the gesture. They paid separately and walked out into the bright morning sunshine together. "I'll see you Monday morning at 9, Alexander said. "The office address is in the email I'm going to send you with all the details." "And Maya? Thank you. I think this is going to work out well for both of us." Maya watched him walk away toward a sleek black car parked down the street, then turned and headed toward the bus stop. Her mind was spinning with everything that had just happened, with the sudden reversal of fortune that seemed almost impossible. She couldn't wait to get home and tell her family the news. When she arrived at the apartment an hour later, she found her mother awake and sitting up in bed, looking more alert than she had in days. Jasmine was helping her eat some yogurt while telling her about a scholarship opportunity her guidance counselor had mentioned. "Maya," her mother called out when she saw her. "You're glowing, baby. Did something good happen?" Maya couldn't contain her smile. "Mama, I got a job. A real job with a real salary and health insurance that will cover all of your medical expenses." The room erupted with excited questions. Maya told them everything, leaving out the parts about Victoria Sterling's cruelty because she didn't want to worry them. She focused instead on Alexander, on his kindness and apparent integrity, on the opportunity this represented for all of them. "This is answered prayer," Eleanor said, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I've been praying so hard for something to break in our favor. And now this. My baby girl is going to be an executive assistant." "Mama, it's just a job," Maya protested, but she was smiling. "It's not just a job," Jasmine said firmly. "It's a chance, a real chance for all of us to breathe a little easier, to maybe dream a little bigger. You did this, Maya. You saved us." Maya shook her head. "We saved each other. We always do." That night, lying in bed in the room she shared with Jasmine, Monday morning arrived faster than Maya expected. She stood in front of her shared closet at 5:30 in the morning, staring at her limited wardrobe options with growing anxiety. Her navy dress was still clean, but she needed at least a week's worth of professional clothes now. She had spent her weekend at thrift stores and discount outlets, carefully selecting pieces that looked expensive but cost next to nothing. 3 blouses, 2 pairs of dress pants, a cardigan, and a simple black skirt now hung alongside her old work clothes. Jasmine stirred in the bed behind her. "You okay, sis?" "Just nervous," Maya admitted, settling on gray pants and a white blouse. "What if I mess this up? What if I'm not smart enough or fast enough or professional enough?" "Then you'll learn and get better," Jasmine said firmly, sitting up and rubbing her eyes. "You're one of the smartest people I know, Maya. You taught yourself calculus from a library book to help me with homework. You figured out how to navigate health insurance bureaucracy to get Mama the treatment she needed. You can definitely learn to be someone's assistant." Maya smiled at her sister's fierce confidence. "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from the best," Jasmine replied, getting out of bed to give Maya a hug. "Now go change the world, or at least answer some emails really well." The Sterling Enterprises building downtown was a gleaming tower of steel and glass that seemed to touch the clouds. Maya had passed it countless times on the bus, never imagining she would actually work inside. The lobby was all marble and modern art, with a security desk manned by guards in crisp uniforms. She approached nervously, clutching her new employee packet that Alexander had sent over the weekend. "I'm Maya Johnson," she told the guard. "It's my first day as Mr. Sterling's assistant." The guard checked his computer, nodded, and handed her a security badge with her photo already printed on it. 23rd floor, suite 2315. Elevators are to your right. Welcome to Sterling Enterprises, Ms. Johnson. The elevator ride felt like it lasted forever. Maya's reflection stared back at her from the polished steel doors, a young black woman trying very hard to look confident and professional. She straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin. She belonged here. She had earned this opportunity. She would not let imposter syndrome rob her of this chance. The 23rd floor was quieter than she expected, with thick carpeting that muffled footsteps and walls in calming shades of blue and gray. Suite 2315 was at the end of a hallway, marked with a simple plaque, Alexander Sterling, VP of International Development. Maya took a deep breath and pushed through the door. The reception area was elegant but understated. A sleek desk sat near the windows, which offered a breathtaking view of the city. There was a small waiting area with comfortable chairs and a coffee table displaying current business magazines. To the left was a door that presumably led to Alexander's private office. "You made it." Alexander's voice came from the office doorway. He looked professionally casual in dark slacks and a light blue button-down with the sleeves rolled up. His smile was warm and welcoming. "How are you feeling?" "Terrified," Maya admitted honestly, "but ready to learn." "Perfect," he said, laughing. "Confidence is overrated anyway. Come on, let me show you around." The next few hours passed in a whirlwind of information. Alexander walked her through the filing system, both digital and physical. He explained his current projects, a resort development in Thailand, a technology partnership in South Korea, a green energy initiative in Chile. He introduced her to the calendar system he used, his preferences for scheduling meetings, and his communication style with various international partners. "I'm a morning person," he explained, showing her his typical daily schedule. "I like to tackle the hardest tasks first thing, usually between 7 and 10. After lunch, I'm better with meetings and calls. By 4 o'clock, my brain is fried for anything requiring deep thought. So that's when I prefer to handle administrative tasks or casual check-ins." Maya took notes furiously, her hand cramping as she tried to capture everything. Alexander was patient, answering her questions and explaining things multiple times when she asked. He treated her like a colleague rather than a subordinate, which was disorienting after working at the mansion where the staff was barely acknowledged as human. Around 11 o'clock, a woman in her 30s appeared in the doorway. She was striking, with auburn hair pulled back in a severe bun and designer clothes that screamed money. Her eyes landed on Maya with undisguised curiosity. "Alexander, darling," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "I didn't realize you had hired someone new." "Veronica, this is Maya Johnson, my new executive assistant," Alexander said, his tone polite, but noticeably cooler. "Maya, this is Veronica Carrington. She works in our marketing department." Veronica. The name clicked in Maya's memory. This was the woman Victoria had been trying to set Alexander up with, the one with excellent pedigree and a Vanderbilt mother. "How lovely," Veronica said, looking Maya up and down in a way that made her skin crawl. "And where did you work before this? Did Alexander steal you from another company?" "I'm new to corporate work," Maya said, keeping her voice steady. "But I'm a quick learner." "I'm sure you are," Veronica replied, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Well, Alexander, I just wanted to remind you about the Heartfelt Foundation Gala this Saturday. Your mother specifically requested that you attend, and I thought perhaps we could go together. It would give us a chance to catch up." "I'll have to check my schedule," Alexander said, his discomfort obvious. "Maya, can you make a note to look into that?" Maya pulled out her phone, opening the Notes app. "Of course. The Heartfelt Foundation Gala, this Saturday. I'll add it to your calendar, and we can discuss it later." Veronica's smile became even more forced. "How efficient. Well, I'll let you get back to your training. It was lovely to meet you, Maya." After she left, Alexander ran a hand through his hair with a frustrated sigh. "I apologize for that. Veronica is persistent. Your mother's choice for you?" Maya guessed. "She's mentioned it once or twice," Alexander said dryly. "Or about 100 times. Veronica's a perfectly nice person, I'm sure, but she wants things from me that I can't give her. Status, mostly, and access to the sterling name and fortune. Not exactly the foundation for a meaningful relationship." "That must be difficult," Maya said carefully. "Being seen as a prize rather than a person." Alexander looked at her with surprise, like he hadn't expected her to understand. "It is, actually. Most people don't see that part. They think money solves everything, makes everything easier. But it complicates relationships in ways that are hard to explain." Before Maya could respond, the phone on the desk rang. Alexander showed her how to answer, screening calls, and transferring the important ones to his office line. The caller was from the Seoul office, needing urgent clarification on some contract terms. Maya took a detailed message, making sure to note the time zone difference for when to return the call. The day progressed in a steady stream of tasks and learning. Maya answered phones, sorted emails according to priority, scheduled 2 meetings for later in the week, and began familiarizing herself with the various projects Alexander was managing. It was overwhelming but exhilarating, like drinking from a fire hose but enjoying the water. Around 6 o'clock, Alexander emerged from his office looking exhausted. "I think that's enough for your first day. You did great, Maya. Better than great, actually. You kept up with everything I threw at you." "Thank you," Maya said, saving the document she had been working on. "Should I expect the days to always be this busy?" "Some are busier, some are slower," he admitted. "But you handled it all with grace. I'm impressed. Now go home, rest, and we'll tackle it all again tomorrow." Maya gathered her things and headed for the elevator, her mind still spinning with everything she had learned. As the elevator descended, she allowed herself a moment of pride. She had survived her first day. More than survived, she had done well. Maybe she really could handle this job after all. The next few weeks fell into a rhythm. Maya arrived at 7:30 each morning, getting the office ready before Alexander came in at 8. She learned his preferences, anticipated his needs, and managed his increasingly complex schedule with growing confidence. The work was challenging but rewarding, and Alexander continued to treat her with consistent respect and kindness. She also began to see beyond the professional facade, glimpsing the man beneath the corporate title. Alexander worked brutally long hours, often staying in the office until 8 or 9 at night. He ate lunch at his desk most days, working through calls with international partners while consuming sad sandwiches from the cafeteria. He carried the weight of his responsibilities heavily, taking personally every setback or delay in his projects. "You need to take better care of yourself," Maya told him one Thursday afternoon, finding him at his desk at 7 o'clock with his eyes bloodshot from staring at his computer. "When's the last time you had a meal that wasn't from the cafeteria or delivered?" "I can't remember," he admitted, rubbing his temples. "But I'm fine. I just need to finish this proposal for the Tokyo office." "You're going to burn out," Maya said firmly. "And then, where will that leave your Tokyo office? Take a break. Go home. Eat a real dinner. Sleep in your own bed. The proposal will still be here tomorrow." Alexander looked up at her with surprise. "Are you actually ordering me around?" "Someone needs to," Maya replied, not backing down. "You take care of everyone else's needs. Who takes care of yours?" Something flickered across his face, an emotion Maya couldn't quite read. "Not many people," he said quietly. "Usually no one." The vulnerability in his voice caught her off guard. This wealthy, powerful man seemed lonely in a way that had nothing to do with being alone. He was surrounded by people all day, employees, business partners, social acquaintances, but Maya suspected very few of them actually saw him as a person rather than a position or an opportunity. "Then, consider it part of my job description," Maya said, her tone gentler. "Making sure my boss doesn't work himself to death before he's 40. Alexander laughed, the sound surprising them both. "Deal. I'll go home tonight. But only if you promise to leave on time too. I know you've been staying late." Maya shrugged. "I'm learning. It takes me longer to do things than it probably should." "You're doing amazing work," Alexander said seriously. "I mean that, Maya. I don't know how I managed before you got here." The praise warmed her more than it probably should have. Maya had spent so much of her life being invisible, being dismissed, being treated as lesser. Having someone like Alexander acknowledge her worth and her efforts meant more than she knew how to express. As October turned into November, Maya's life began to stabilize in ways she hadn't dared hope for. The health insurance through Sterling Enterprises covered all of her mother's medical expenses, including a new treatment plan that was showing promising results. Eleanor was in less pain, had more energy, and was even talking about maybe being strong enough to attend Jasmine's high school graduation in the spring. Jasmine had applied for several scholarships that Maya's new income made them eligible for. Between the scholarships, some federal aid, and what they could now contribute, college was suddenly possible. Her sister's excitement was infectious, her dreams of becoming a doctor no longer seeming impossibly out of reach. Marcus had been able to cut back to one job, giving him time to take some online courses in computer programming. James was thriving in his recovery program, which they could now help pay for properly, ensuring he got the support he needed to stay clean. The change in their circumstances felt almost miraculous. Maya knew it was all thanks to Alexander's decision to give her a chance, to look past her lack of traditional qualifications and see her potential instead. She was determined to prove that his faith in her wasn't misplaced. But not everything was smooth. Victoria Sterling made her presence felt in small, cutting ways. She would call the office occasionally, and her tone when Maya answered was always icy with disdain. She made comments during these calls about the help overstepping their bounds, clearly designed to remind Maya of her place. The Hartwell Foundation Gala that Veronica had mentioned arrived on a Saturday in mid-November. Maya wasn't expected to attend. It was a purely social event, but Alexander asked her to help prepare his remarks for a speech he had to give as a board member. They worked together in the office that Friday afternoon, Maya taking notes as Alexander outlined his thoughts about the foundation's new literacy initiative. It was a cause he clearly cared about, his passion evident as he talked about education as the great equalizer, about giving children from disadvantaged backgrounds the tools they needed to succeed. "You really believe in this?" Maya observed, looking up from her laptop. "I do," Alexander said. "Education changed my life. Not the fancy private schools my mother insisted on, but the books I read on my own, the ideas I was exposed to, the teachers who encouraged me to think critically about the world. Every kid deserves that chance, regardless of what zip code they're born into." "That's beautiful," Maya said softly. "Your speech should open with that sentiment. It's powerful and genuine." They worked together for another hour, crafting and refining the remarks. Maya suggested edits, and Alexander implemented them without ego, genuinely valuing her input. It felt like partnership rather than hierarchy, and Maya had to keep reminding herself that this was her boss, not her friend, no matter how comfortable their working relationship became. "Thank you for this," Alexander said as they wrapped up. "You made that so much easier. And better." "It's literally my job," Maya replied, smiling. "No, your job is to manage my schedule and answer my phones," Alexander corrected. "This is something more. You have good instincts, Maya. You should trust them." He held her gaze for a moment longer than necessary, and Maya felt something shift in the air between them. It was subtle, barely there, but unmistakable. She broke eye contact first, suddenly, nervous. "Well, I hope the gala goes well," she said, busying herself with packing up her things. "Try to enjoy yourself, even if Veronica and your mother are there." Alexander made a face. "I'll try, though enjoyment might be too strong a word. Survival is probably more accurate." Maya laughed, slinging her bag over her shoulder. "Survive with grace, then." "See you Monday, Alexander." "See you Monday, Maya." As she left the office, Maya tried to ignore the flutter in her chest, the warmth that Alexander's praise had kindled. She couldn't afford to develop feelings for her boss. That way lay nothing but complications and heartache. He was a billionaire from one of the city's most prestigious families. She was a former maid with a sick mother and a pile of responsibilities. But as she rode the bus home, watching the city lights blur past the windows, Maya couldn't quite suppress the small voice in her head that whispered, "What if? What if his kindness wasn't just professional courtesy? What if the way he looked at her sometimes meant something more? What if, despite all the reasons it was impossible, there was something real growing between them?" She pushed the thoughts away firmly. She had fought too hard to get to this point to risk it all on romantic fantasies. Her job was to be professional, competent, and reliable. Nothing more. Monday morning arrived cold and gray, with rain threatening in the heavy clouds overhead. Maya was at her desk by 7:30 as usual, reviewing Alexander's schedule and preparing briefs for his morning meetings. She had just finished printing documents when Alexander arrived at 8:15, looking unusually disheveled. His normally neat hair was messy, his tie was slightly askew, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He barely acknowledged Maya as he swept past her desk into his office, closing the door behind him with more force than necessary. Maya sat frozen at her desk, uncertain what to do. In the 6 weeks she had worked here, she had never seen Alexander like this. Something had clearly happened at the gala, something that had shaken his usual composed demeanor. She debated leaving him alone versus checking on him, professional boundaries warring with genuine concern. Finally, concern won. She made a fresh pot of coffee, poured a cup the way he liked it, black with just a touch of cream, and knocked softly on his office door. "Come in," his voice was gruff. Maya entered to find him standing at the window, staring out at the gray cityscape. "I brought coffee," she said quietly, setting the mug on his desk. "Is everything okay?" "My mother invited Veronica to sit at our table," Alexander said without turning around. "Spent the entire evening making comments about what a perfect couple we would make. How Veronica comes from such good family. How it's time I settled down and provided her with grandchildren from proper stock." The last two words dripped with bitterness. Maya felt anger rise in her chest, understanding immediately what Victoria's emphasis on proper stock really meant. "I'm sorry," she said. "That must have been incredibly uncomfortable." Alexander turned to face her then, and the look in his eyes was complicated: frustration, exhaustion, and something else that looked almost like desperation. "She cornered me in the coat room, told me she won't approve of my next promotion to president of the company unless I get serious about my personal life. Said I'm embarrassing the family with my reluctance to settle down appropriately. She's trying to control you," Maya observed, "using the company as leverage." "She owns 40% of Sterling Enterprises," Alexander said tiredly. "Left to her by my father. I run the company, but she still has significant power on the board. If she decides to make things difficult, she can." Maya didn't know what to say. This glimpse into Alexander's struggles reminded her that wealth didn't solve all problems. It just created different, more complicated ones. He was trapped by his family obligations, his inheritance, and his mother's expectations just as surely as Maya had once been trapped by poverty and lack of opportunity. "What are you going to do?" she asked. Alexander was quiet for a long moment, still holding her gaze. When he finally spoke, his voice was firm with decision. "I'm going to live my life according to my own values, not hers. Whatever consequences come from that, I'll handle them." There was something in the way he looked at her when he said it, something intense and meaningful that made Maya's heart skip. But before she could respond, before she could even process what that look might mean, the phone on her desk rang, shattering the moment. "I should get that," Maya said, her voice slightly breathless. "Yes, of course," Alexander agreed, running a hand through his already messy hair. Maya fled to her desk, answering the phone with her professional voice while her mind spun with implications she wasn't ready to examine. Something had shifted between them in that office, something significant that couldn't be easily dismissed or ignored. But what it meant, what it could become, and whether either of them was brave enough to find out, those were questions that would have to wait for another day. Maya stared at the ceiling and thought about the strange twists life could take. 3 weeks ago, she had been humiliated and fired, walking through the rain with her dignity in tatters and her future looking bleak. Now she had a job that paid more than she had ever imagined making, working for a man who seemed genuinely decent. She thought about Alexander Sterling and tried to understand what motivated him. Was it really just his father's dying wishes? Was it guilt over his mother's behavior? Or was there something more, some genuine compassion that ran deeper than circumstances? She would find out soon enough. Monday morning would mark the beginning of either a great opportunity or a complicated mistake. But for now, for this one night, Maya allowed herself to feel hope. Hope that things might actually work out, that her mother might get the treatment she needed, that Jasmine might go to college after all, that their family might finally catch a break after years of struggling and scraping by. Tomorrow she would worry about whether she was actually capable of doing this job. Tomorrow she would stress about learning new systems and meeting new people and navigating the complicated world of corporate offices. Tomorrow she would second-guess her decision and wonder if she was in over her head. But tonight, Maya let herself rest in the simple joy of knowing that Monday morning, she would walk into an office as someone's assistant rather than someone's maid. It wasn't everything, but it was something. And after the year they had endured, something was more than enough. Turning away. Thank you for the thought, but I'll manage. She walked toward the gate, forcing herself not to look back. Behind her, she heard Alexander call out one more time. If you change your mind, call the main house, and leave a message for me personally, he said. Please. I mean it. Maya didn't respond, didn't acknowledge his words. She walked through the gate, and down the street toward the bus stop, her clothes plastered to her body, her bag growing heavy with rainwater. She felt like she was walking away from more than just a job. She was walking away from stability, from the ability to help her family, from the carefully constructed life she had been trying so hard to build. By the time she reached the bus stop, she was shivering uncontrollably. She sat on the bench under the small shelter, finally, allowing herself to cry properly. She cried for the job she had lost, for the bills she couldn't pay, for her mother who needed medication she wouldn't be able to afford, for the dreams that seemed to get smaller and smaller every year. The bus arrived 15 minutes later, nearly empty in the middle of the afternoon. Maya climbed aboard, found a seat in the back, and stared out the window at the city passing by. Somewhere out there was another job, another opportunity, another chance. She just had to find it before everything she had been fighting so hard to hold together finally fell apart.